Good morning. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Here are the stories we're following today.
Well, tomorrow we'll see if November's employment report in the United States shows more evidence of a cooling labor market. We'll get the numbers around 8:30 in the morning Wall Street time. Bloomberg's Michael McKee has a preview.
We should be seeing signs of a slowing economy in the labor market, but economists say not just yet. The consensus forecast is November saw the pace of hiring pick up, while unemployment was unchanged. About 30,000 jobs won't be new. They will just reflect the return of auto workers to payrolls after the UAW strike. But hiring in healthcare, leisure and hospitality, and government should keep healthy numbers beyond manufacturing. Markets are pricing a lower than anticipated number, however, so strength could lead to higher rates as investors worry the Fed may not yet be done with rate hikes. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
We go next to Tesla's Dojo supercomputer project. Now, the head of the project, Ganesh Venkatraman, has left the company. The Dojo system, if you don't know, is a supercomputer made to train machine learning models behind Tesla's self-driving systems. Here's Bloomberg's Mark Gurman.
They have put a new person in charge named Peter Bannon. He was a former mid-level chip executive at Apple. He's now leading the program. And obviously, when the head of the program leaves, that means there is some sort of strategy rethink going on, and it is a bit of a blow to the effort. So this is extraordinarily significant news, both within Tesla as well as in the modern processor and AI community.
That is Bloomberg's Mark Gurman there. By the way, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk was saying the company is planning to invest more than $1 billion on Project Dojo by the end of 2024. Shares in Tesla today, Brian, up 1.3% in New York trading.
Well, let's take a closer look, Doug, at Broadcom's earnings. The stock in after hours had been down, but it's back to essentially unchanged here. Broadcom posted its slowest sales growth since 2020 as the chip maker tried to pull out of an industry-wide slump. Let's get the story from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellett.
Broadcom just completed the acquisition of VMware for more than $60 billion. Revenue grew 4% to $9.3 billion in the fiscal fourth quarter. Broadcom also predicted that its 2024 revenue would be at least $50 billion, including VMware, a number that appears to be below the two companies' combined sales estimates. Broadcom has suffered decelerating growth brought on by sluggish demand for computers and smartphones. In New York, Charlie Pellett, Bloomberg Radio.
The U.S. and Mexico will be beefing up screening of foreign investments because of concerns over China. The story from Bloomberg's Ann Cates.
The Biden administration and Mexico have agreed to boost cooperation with a rush of Chinese investors into the southern U.S. neighbor, stoking concerns about national security risks in the supply chain. Without mentioning China by name, the Treasury Department says a group formed with Mexico will conduct investment reviews, especially in certain technologies, critical infrastructure, and sensitive data. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says working together on financial and regulatory policy can further increase trade and investment and the benefits they bring. In Washington, Ann Cates, Bloomberg Radio.
U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai says the U.S. and Taiwan are looking to build on a deal reached earlier this year. The deal covers issues like regulatory practices, customs, and corruption, but it excludes anything about tariff reductions, traditionally called market access. These are thorny issues that are difficult to resolve given tensions between the U.S. and China. Tai spoke about negotiations with Taiwan earlier with Bloomberg.
We are negotiating another set of disciplines right as we speak. We've been making excellent progress, and we will continue to look at building out those agreements to have an arrangement with the Taiwan economy that is fit for the times. And the times are very challenging.
Tai did not rule out a free trade agreement with Taiwan, but she said that the U.S. is not seeking what she called very comprehensive, maximally liberalizing deals with any country at the moment.
Chinese President Xi Jinping told European Union leaders that he wants these two sides to be key trading partners capable of building trust when it comes to supply chains. President Xi met with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen along with European Council President Charles Michel. Von der Leyen said she had a good and candid exchange with Xi Jinping.
China is the EU's most important trading partner, but there are clear imbalances and differences that we must address. We both recognize the importance of de-risking and strengthening the resilience of our economies, And that is why the European Union is working to ensure the security of its supply chains, critical infrastructure, and technological and industrial bases.
That is EC President Ursula von der Leyen. By the way, state media in China said that President Xi and those EU leaders also discussed the Belt and Road Initiative during their meeting. Xi telling officials his nation was willing to connect his initiative with the EU's Global Gateway. Now, the European program is an infrastructure plan. It's aimed at competing with China in the areas of strategic regionality. Brian?
It's time for Global News. Let's get right over to Ed Baxter in the 960 newsroom in San Francisco. Ed.
All right, Brian, thank you. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened to devastate Beirut if Hezbollah opens up a second front. Netanyahu made the warning during a visit to the IDF and Northern Command. He says a second front would lead to Beirut and also southern Lebanon. Bloomberg's Nick Wadham says complete devastation is the threat.
There is a strategy here, and that is essentially deterrence. The last thing Israel wants right now is for the shelling and back and forth that has happened on the border of Lebanon to turn into a wider conflict that would divert more of its resources away from its campaign in Gaza.
And Bloomberg's Anthony Squazine says the campaign in Gaza itself is going to take months, 500 more tunnels to destroy.
In total, they believe there are 500 kilometers, which is about 311 miles of tunnels. I don't know what that translates to, but they feel there are still many tunnels that they have to find.
And says there's no timeline actually spelled out. Meanwhile, the presidents of Harvard, University of Pennsylvania are walking back comments indicating hesitancy and calling for genocide of Jews violating school policy. Penn President Liz McGill says she was focused in the moment on her school's policy to not punish speech alone.
I want to be clear. A call for genocide of Jewish people is threatening, deeply so. It is intentionally meant to terrify a people who have been subjected to pogroms and hatred for centuries and were the victims of mass genocide in the Holocaust.
Harvard's Claudine Gay, meanwhile, released a statement saying genocide threats have no place at Harvard. Biden administration's top envoy to Asia says North Korea has spurned all outreach. Kurt Campbell says difficulty even getting them to address letters sent to them. Aid for Ukraine, the debate on deadline. NSC spokesman John Kirby says time is running out.
We've got a few more weeks here, and then we're out of Schlitz when it comes to helping Ukraine with this kind of security assistance that we've been able to provide. And that's just, that should be unacceptable to everybody.
But Senator Lindsey Graham says the southern border has to be addressed.
Secure the border before we get attacked. Secure the border before the next terrorist attack happens.
Yeah, meanwhile, a spokeswoman for the White House, Karine Jean-Pierre, says Congress does have the recess coming up, and this is embarrassing.
It's stunning that we have gotten to this point, and that Republicans in Congress willing to give Putin a gift, the greatest gift that Putin could hope for. That's what we're seeing. And so they are playing chicken with our national security.
Yeah, meanwhile, President Putin is pledging closer ties with Iran after his Gulf visit. Russia and Iran have been building a very close military tie. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now in San Francisco. I'm Ed Baxter, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, let's bring in Ian King, Bloomberg News U.S. semiconductor reporter, for a closer look at Broadcom's earnings and how that feeds into some of the euphoria that we saw on artificial intelligence. Ian, thanks very much. So the Broadcom earnings were a little bit lackluster, revenue only up 4%, and the forecast, as we heard there from Charlie, and as you pointed out in your story, the forecast for sales only $50 billion, which isn't all that impressive given the addition of VMware. But the CEO did sound optimistic about AI, so it's kind of steady as she goes, I guess.
And there are a lot of moving parts here, as you would expect from a company that's just acquired another one for the size of VMware. So there were some explanations on the call which I think help, and you saw the stock come back a little bit in after-hours trading. The forecast looked light, and how the company explained this was like, look, we're going to get about $12 billion of revenue by adding VMware in our next financial year. Estimates are called for about 14. So where's the $2 billion going? And what he said was, look, we're going to spin off a couple of units that we don't think fit with our overall portfolio. Those 2 units account for about $2 billion of sales, so we've not included them in our forecast. And I think that helped people get a little bit more comfortable with what was going on overall. But yeah, obviously there was a lot of explaining that needed to be done about AI and some of the other areas that they're working on as well.
So Ian, connect the dots for me. So you have Broadcom, the acquisition of VMware.
Yeah.
How does that all fit with this theme of artificial intelligence?
VMware does not. That's the AI was definitely a focus on the call, and there was definitely some excitement. What they said was, look, our networking gear, these are the switch chips which control the flow of data between computers in a data center. They're doing great. All of those powerful projections, such as the one that we saw yesterday from AMD, they're true. We're seeing the same thing. That particular portion has gone from like 15%, has gone as high as 15% of our semiconductor revenue, and it's going to go considerably higher than that. So, yes, they ticked all of the boxes on that. So the side of the fence, but at the same time, that's only a certain percentage and has a limited impact on what's going on overall, which includes enterprise software, which includes virtualization software from VMware, it includes networking chips that go into the iPhone, and you name it, and storage and everything else that Broadcom does as well. So, yes, it's great. Yes, fantastic. We should be excited about AI, but bear in mind it's only a part of the story.
In a sense, the additional, acquisition of VMware, adding more software in the picture, would sort of seem to smooth out the earnings path for the company, wouldn't it? Because semiconductors are volatile, quite cyclical in nature, and really famous for going up and down a lot, whereas software would be steadier, wouldn't it?
Well, this is back to Hock Tan's core thesis, and you're right to focus on that. His idea is that the semiconductor industry is not cyclical anymore. It's stable, and we should start acting like that. What's happened over the last couple of years has been sort of an anomaly. But yes, software also fits that. He said a lot of these companies are out there chasing growth like idiots, basically. He didn't say it, but he kind of implies it. And when he talks about these other companies, he uses the word sensible. And, if you stop doing that and you just concentrate on what you're good at, which he's going to do with VMware, and he says he's done with previous acquisitions, yes, you don't see this huge growth spurt, but at the same time, you have fabulous level of cash generation. You have a fabulous level of profitability. We're going to give you investors a lot of returns, and that's a sensible way. That's the way that these companies should be run. Once they wake up and smell the cornflakes and stop chasing these crazy things that they're never going to get to. That's his thesis, and that's what he sees as how the industry is. So yes, there are all of these balancing factors, but he's sticking to this view of the world is only growing, as a small increment on top of GDP, minus what's going on with AI right now, because that's a new thing.
Oh, well, speaking of AI, yesterday, Ian, we were talking about the announcement from Advanced Micro Devices, the new MI300 accelerator chip. Kind of a delayed reaction when you look at the stock. Today, AMD shares were up 10%. Is this new chip capable of competing with the one from NVIDIA when it comes to running AI software?
AMD said it was. And, it's got to, right? Lisa Su, the CEO, and we had a couple of conversations with her yesterday, she's like, look, it's important that we can compete with them on training, which is the big market right now, but when it comes to actually implementing the software and running it, we've got to be good at that, and we are going to be better at that than they are, because that's a bigger market. And it took a while for people to sort of get their head around that, but I think they did. I think the big headline from yesterday was she talked about the market as being upwards of $400 billion of total revenue for these accelerators. Bear in mind the total chip industry was only worth $590 billion last year. So that's a massive amount of growth that she's projecting. And she looked at me, said, Ian, you know me. I don't get carried away with these things. I'm telling you this. I believe it.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Ian. We love having you on the show. Ian King, Bloomberg News U.S. semiconductor reporter. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, your morning brief on the stories making news from Hong Kong to Singapore and Wall Street.
Look for us on your podcast feed every day on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcast.
You can also listen live each day on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM Channel 119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Join us again tomorrow for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.